My name is Colin Austin, and in today's Food for Health video I want to talk about solutions to the chronic health epidemic, focusing on the combination of technology and sociology. 50 years ago, chronic diseases were virtually unheard of, as they still are in many traditional societies. If people avoided dying from infection, accident or war, they lived to a ripe old age and enjoyed robust health until they die. Technology is the easy bit. We fully understand the technology to fix the epidemic. I grew up in the era where everyone I know was growing much of their own food, and I clearly remember what and how they grow their food. More recently, I have travelled to traditional societies and studied how they manage to enjoy robust health in old age by growing their own food. We know that in modern society, bad food is making older people die younger and be less fit in old age. We now learn that it is affecting younger people, even babies with mother milk becoming deficient in vitamin D. We have the technology right now to fix the epidemic. It is simple and there is no magic to it. What we struggle with is sociology, understanding how society has changed and how we need to change the way society works to adapt to the new technologies which have simply exploded in the last 50 years. Technology changes society, and it takes a long time for society to change to fully adapt to the new technologies. This is the real reason why people are getting fat and sick across the globe, and we need to understand how a creature evolved over millions of years, swinging about in the branches of trees, has to learn to adapt to our globalized society, where decisions about what we put on our table may be taken, at least in part, in boardrooms on the other side of the world. I happen to enjoy the benefits of modern technology, but that is irrelevant as we cannot uninvent things. Instead, we have to learn to make use of modern technology so it benefits the community as a whole. That is why I try and explain it as I tell this story, so sit back and enjoy. I will start by hopping into my time machine, just back from being converted to electric, and zap back a million years or so. Our ancestors were pretty puny creatures, largely living in trees where we avoided being eaten by large animals. A rather useful trait if you're concerned about the future of your species, which thankfully they were. Leopards could climb trees, but we were pretty quick, swinging from branch to branch, so they soon got fed up with the chase. Then something terrible happened. The trees disappeared. Some think it was the formation of the Rift Valley and the elevation of the land. Others think it was climate change, but we lost our protection and had to live in the open savanna, filled with the ferocious beasts which were far faster and stronger than us, and with particularly big teeth. If they had not solved this problem, I would not be talking to you now. Their solution was a combination of technology and social engineering. We found that one of the advantages of standing on legs was that we were pretty good at throwing stones, and that lions didn't like that. But just one person throwing stones just made the lion angry, so they gobbled him up real quick. But we found out that if a whole bunch of us got together and we all threw stones at the lion in rapid fire, they would just nick off and leave us alone. We had used our small but reasonably effective brains to make two types of advance: the technology of throwing stones and social engineering. If one lazy individual did not want to cooperate in rapid fire stone throwing and simply ran away, he would very quickly end up as lion dinner. If he stayed with the group but did not do his fair share of stone throwing, then once the lions had nicked off, we would use this lazy sod for target practice, and next time he would do his fair share of stone throwing. We invented group pressure. It would be very wrong to think that once they had overcome the threat of wild animals, that life was all sweet and honey. From looking at the bones, we see there was much intertribal fighting, and some people argue that the reason we spread across the world so rapidly was that tribes were simply pushed out by more aggressive tribes. Anthropologists who have studied behaviour have concluded that cooperation with other humans is the normal behaviour. But some leaders of the tribes found it helped secure their position as leader if there was an external enemy. An interesting idea I will explore later as I try and explain why so many people are getting fat and sick, and unlikely as it may sound at first, that your pension fund may be playing a critical role. Every technical innovation has required us to change our social behaviour, whether stone throwing, sailing ships, the steam engine, mass production. The car allowed the suburbs. In the last 50 years, we have experienced the most dramatic change in technology and are still working out how to change our society to adapt. I have lived through the greatest technological change ever, with 4 technologies being standout. The first is the jet engine, particularly the 747, which revolutionised intercontinental travel. The second is the computer, and the third the internet, which has further opened up the world to globalisation. The fourth technology we have to learn to adapt to is chemistry, where since World War II we've had a range of chemicals from artificial fertilisers and pesticides which help grow or contaminate our food supply. Right from birth, I grew up with people growing much of their own fruit and vegetables. Milk was delivered daily from the local farm by horse and cart. Many people kept chickens, or at least brought eggs from a local farmer. We did have a local shop for a limited range of supplies, particularly bread, meat, flour, etc. But just as in our stone-throwing ancestors' age, the pressure to adapt to standards came from the local community. If a shopkeeper decided to add some toxic chemicals to the food, he would certainly have been boycotted by the community and the kids like me, letting down the delivery boy's bike tyres. Now the decision on what goes into our food is not taken at the local farm or shopkeeper, but is taken at some global headquarters, maybe in Chicago or New York. I live in Bundaberg, Queensland, which could easily be nicknamed Podgy Town, as almost every other person is fat and probably diabetic. Why? I could give you a long lecture on the technological reasons, how toxic chemicals are comprising our gut biology, which is our intelligent control system and decides what and how much we should eat, and how our food contains too much sugar and lacks essential nutrients, which leads us to overeating. But that is just a technical argument, which by itself will never solve the epidemic. We need to explain how 50 years ago there was no chronic disease epidemic, and now there is. What has changed? To answer that question, we have to look at the problem from a sociological point of view, how the world really works. How has society changed to allow this epidemic to occur? That is the real question. Does the food CEO in Chicago know or care that his sugar-laden food is making people on the other side of the world podgy and diabetic? Probably not. Does he know or care that toxin in his food is compromising the podges of Bundaberg's gut biology? Probably not. Does he know or care that the toxins in his food is compromising the podges of Bundaberg's gut biology? Probably not. Do the people of Bundaberg have any influence over the CEO in Chicago? Absolutely not. But let us give him the benefit of the doubt and assume he's a humane and caring person who really wants to help people eat a healthy diet. Would it make the slightest difference? Simply no. He, like every other person on the globe, is subject to influence, but his influences are not the podgy population of Bundaberg, but the financiers in New York who ultimately have control of his company. Much of the investment capital in the world comes from superannuation funds and a relatively small number of very wealthy people. The superannuation funds are working for millions of employees, so they have enough money when they retire, so their job is to maximise the return on investment for these hard-working people. If our CEO has a conscience and decides that all his products will be free of toxins, low in sugars, but high in minerals and phytonutrients, and the profit went down the hill, he will soon be replaced by someone less motivated by morals. So he really has no option. If he thinks that loading the breakfast cereal of the podges of Bundabergs with sugar will increase profits for the global corporation, then up will go the sugar levels. If spraying our vegetables with toxic chemicals, which destroys both pests and our gut biology, so it no longer controls our appetite, then as long as it makes money for the corporation, then on go the chemicals. If our vegetables are sadly deficient in trace minerals, as they are, then rest assured our CEO is not going to change that while it will increase cost at a lower profit. Now, I have no idea who the CEO of the Global Food Corporation is in his flush office in Chicago. He may be a very nice and humane guy and seriously troubled by his actions, or not. But we can't blame him. It is the social system's failure to adjust to the new technologies and economic system in which we live. Let me summarise. For some million years, humanoid creatures survived by a combination of technology and forming social groups. Throughout all this time, we essentially operated in local groups, at first small tribes of 20 or so people, but later as nations with millions of peoples, but still a coherent local group. In the last 50 years, technology has changed the world. It is now a global system with very large companies operating and trying to control their interests on a totally global basis. Anyone who has studied food production would be aware that a small number of very large companies have ambitions of controlling the global food supply, operating without borders and beyond the control of national governments. Often, they're not so much above the law, but attempt to become the law by influencing the national governments. Let's talk about change. 50 years ago, chronic illness was virtually insignificant. Now they are the most common cause of death and sickness. The question is why? Now, my expertise is in technology, and I could, and often do, prattle on for hours and hours about trace minerals, phytonutrients, gut biology and more. Very boring if that is not your scene. It may all be true, but it is the wrong answer. The real reason is that 50 years ago, producers were responsible to and controlled by the local community. Now the major food producers are responsible to and controlled by the financial institutions which own the bulk of these companies. To solve the current health epidemic, we have to change the system and give control back to the consumers. We need to understand it is not simply a technical problem. I and many other people know how to grow food that will make us healthy. My website is full of information, so it is easy for me to explain to any competent and willing grower how to grow food to make people healthy. Technically, we know exactly how to solve the current chronic disease epidemic. What we have yet to solve is the changes that we need to make in the way society works. We have to look at how to change the social system, and there is no better example on this than our stone-throwing ancestors, where the group was in control. This is exactly the formula I am promoting. Here's what needs to be done. Form local groups of people who have an interest in consuming healthy food. Many will want to grow some of their own food, which is fine. But my experience in previous years of self-sufficiency, it is virtually impossible to grow the range of foods for a healthy diet. So unless you are happy with a diet of pumpkins, there needs to be an improved system for buying healthy food. So we need to form local groups, the Gbiota Club. It doesn't have to be a highly formal group, just a bunch of buddies. That is not difficult. People can form their own local group on Facebook, such as my group Food for Health Bundaberg, but with their own local name. Diabetes educators and maternity clinics are often very willing to help in forming this group. Some members will be perfectly happy just to be passive members, simply providing purchasing power. But there needs to be some members who are willing to act as coordinators. These coordinators, armed with purchasing power, can make contact with local growers who may be willing to grow and supply food for health. This will inevitably mean some changes in their growing system. They will need to ensure adequate minerals, which is easily done by rock dust. Its plants will need to access the food for biological growth, which essentially means compost, and maybe the group supplying waste food to the grower. They will need to avoid the use of toxic chemicals, which can damage our gut bacteria. I can provide the technology, but this inevitably adds some cost to the on-farm production, so a grower is not going to participate unless there is a clear financial return for him. That's where the group purchasing power comes in. But this on-farm cost can be more than offset by buying directly from the grower. I live in Bundaberg, which is a major horticultural area supplying the major supermarket chains. The growers receive between 15 to 20% of the retail price, with the rest going to transport, store costs, waste, advertising and profits. Plants are picked before they are ripe, shipped in bulk to a warehouse, then redistributed. This is neither a healthy nor economic system. The group can organise with a local carrier, or do it themselves, to go to the farms in the morning, then deliver either to a food hub or their homes. This means food can be eaten the same day, so it is really fresh. This is essentially a more cost-effective system. Healthy food can actually be cheaper. Food can be ordered online, direct from the grower, with no middleman. That is why I set up the Pick and Eat shop website. The grower only harvests what has actually been sold, eliminating one of the major causes of food waste. But it's more than simply buying online. The grower has to describe his farm and growing methods, and buyers are asked to rate the grower for public information. This maker-friendly your farmer approach is key to this change in buying behaviour and is simply a better way. The current agricultural system is slowly destroying our soils and lowering nutrient levels, a major threat to us humans. We are swapping the unstable chemical industrial farming for sustainable biological farming. Let's summarise. Throughout the hundreds of thousands of years we have inhabited the earth, we have been increasing our technological capacity, which has required a change in our social structure. This applies to food. Science has given us great advances in food technology, but the actual food we are now eating is significantly worse than previously local grown produce. It is less nutritious, lacking in key minerals and phytonutrients, and carrying toxins which are damaging our gut biology, which is our intelligent control system. How food is grown is important to health. Technically, we know exactly how to grow food, which will make us healthy. But technology by itself is useless without social change. In the current system, consumers have no control over how their food is grown. That is all decided in boardrooms far away. They are not responsible to us consumers, and we have no control over them. We need to change our social system, getting to know and trust our growers, and buying directly using the growing power of the group and the internet to make it happen. It is simply a question of mutual dependence. Growers become dependent on the consumer for their income, and consumers become dependent on the growers to grow food which makes people healthy. The issue is control. Currently, consumers have no control over how their food is grown. The change is the social system giving back control to the consumers by the money they spend directly with the growers. You can start getting your group together by telling your friends about this video series. Then you can contact me at colinaustin@bigpond.com so we can chat, and I will help you get your group up and running. In my next videos, I'll talk more about the role of coordinators.